Доброго ранку, шановні.
Good morning. We are starting our press briefings, and first we'll be talking about e-governance for Ukraine, the e-agenda, electronic agenda, e-governance, plans of Ukraine's government and expectations of Ukraine's. Oleksandr Ryzhenko, head of the State Agency for Electronic Governance of Ukraine, and Roman Kobets, expert on the governance development. I would like to invite Oleksandr and Roman. Good afternoon, esteemed participants. Exactly a week ago, on the 1st of October, the government approved the provisions on the e-governance. In accordance with these provisions, the agency is implementing the state policy in the sphere of informatization, e-governance, and use of e-resources. The necessity to set up a separate executive body on e-governance is stipulated by a very low rate of development of e-governance in Ukraine, according to the latest UN rating as to the e-governance development. Ukraine holds 157th place among 200-something, and we have lost 13 positions in the last years. And also, as to the level of transparency, Europe has very high requirements. There's a requirement as to e-governance and services to underscore the importance of e-governance in the modern world. I would like to mention two things. First, after the results of the UN conference on e-governance in 2012, the e-governance has been identified as the highest priority for sustainable development of the countries. And second, the experts of the World Economic Forum identified the e-governance as one of the main factors of enhancing competitiveness of the country. The countries that demonstrate high level of development of e-governance are more competitive. The main objective of today's press conference is to present the results and key indicators of the agency for 2015. I would like to mention that now we are developing the white book and green book on e-governance in Ukraine, which will identify the main tasks and objectives. The book will be presented in the middle of October 2014, and our plans are for 2015. There are four main directions of development. Among them, e-services, and that's what business and citizens are expecting most, the transparent, non-corrupt services, and this will be achieved if they are rendered electronically. The interaction between the executive authorities, they have to exchange the data from their registers. The next important priority is open data. The market of such data in the European Union can get 680 billion euros. That's more than the whole textile industry in the European Union. The fourth direction is Electronic Country 2020. By that, we mean the development of the state program with short-term and long-term objectives, without which it is impossible to have a comprehensive development of e-governance. I would like to introduce you the key indicators of the development of the agency. These are the objectives that we would like to achieve by the end of 2015. The first one, we need to introduce the e-governance as a pilot project. Then there are 10 information resources of state bodies are to be included into the system of interaction, electronic interaction. 10 priority services are to be rendered electronically out of 20 basic services identified by the European Union. These are the services for business and citizens which are to be mandatory, provided electronically, and we will start introducing e-services from that list. Also introducing the web portal of electronic data. The fifth one is information from 5 priority information sources of central authorities, which is represented as the structured set of data. Again, I would like to emphasize that Ukraine has a huge potential to create a new market in this sphere. We have more than 200,000 experts who are involved into developing this software. Another one is the electronic portal, which will be ready for pilot operation. This is very efficient in many countries of the world. The seventh is creating the Innovation Center of Electronic E-Governance in Ukraine. Eighth is development of concept and implementation of the program of development of e-governance, Electronic Country 2020. The ninth is regional programs of informatization, which are approved in all the regions of Ukraine. I would like to state that there are now 10 information programs of informatization, and this way the regions of Ukraine are unequal, and the level of electronic readiness is different. Most of these indicators are to be improved, and besides, the regulations are to be developed, and in this connection we plan the following changes in legislation. Development of the law of Ukraine on open data. The draft law was presented, it's being discussed. Besides, we plan to introduce amendments into the law of Ukraine on administrative services, on providing e-services, and also the law on electronic identification, the law of Ukraine on the target program Ukraine 2020, introducing amendments to the law of Ukraine on appeals of the citizens, and on the standards and procedure of providing electronic services. We also are planning to pay attention to support these indicators, and that is involving international experts. We work with the experts from Estonia, Latvia, Poland, Switzerland, and European Commission. The level of preparedness of civil servants to use e-governance is very low, so they need a lot of training. They need to understand what e-governance is. We need to develop the awareness campaign among the citizens. My colleague will present the results of a sociological survey, popularization of electronic governance, because that's needed to promote e-governance. Also, we will be joining the projects of the European Union in the sphere of e-governance. These are important transborder projects which will help us to implement the e-governance according to European standards. These plans are ambitious, they are very complicated, but there's no space to withdraw, and we need to catch up with modern countries. Thank you for attention. Now we will give the floor to Roman Kobets.
Доброго дня. Я хотів би
Good afternoon. I would like to tell you that usually there are many ratings. There are two key ratings which are about how much governments are ready to introduce e-governance, and the question, are the citizens ready, is also very important. That is the issue of e-readiness. And that means that information communication technologies open up new opportunities and provide new chances. We need to, of course, we understand how our life has changed thanks to the access to internet. We now get news, watch movies, read books, and why cannot we use all these advantages to make easier the relations, which are usually non-comfortable? They're quite expensive from the point of view of time and money, the relations with the government. But for that, not just the state has to be ready, but the citizens are to be ready. They have to have access to internet, the skills and intentions to do that. We appreciate that the sociological service of Ryzhenko Center in the middle of September, with the support of the SIDA, did the survey all over the territory of Ukraine, with the exception of the territory of Crimea, the territory which is now called ATO, as to how citizens are using internet and what is their attitude to the prospects of interrelation with the authorities. Third part of Ukraine uses internet. Those people who do not use internet, there are 45%. Most of them, if we analyze the barriers why they do not use internet, 58% of these people do not feel need in that. They do not understand the advantages that internet gives, not just in relations with authorities, but in everyday life. Financial, technical reasons, top 20%. These are people who have no technical possibility to get connected, or they don't have money to pay for these services. Another 15% are not sure that they will be able to cope with the internet technologies. Most people use internet from home, and that's 90 to 93%, significantly less from their workplace, only 1/3, and 11% use internet in public spaces. What people are interested in is mostly communication and social networks. For that, 41% of our citizens go to internet. Because of that, 41% are looking for news and weather forecast. The third most popular is search for information. That is 36.5% of citizens who do that. At the same time, the services provided by internet have not become the norm of our life. 42% of internet users were doing certain transactions with the help of internet. They were paying their accounts, changing their tariffs, and doing other things. Traditionally, the e-services develop mostly in private sector. I mean, e-banking and other forms of communication of business with citizens. In Ukraine, only 33% of internet users use these services of banks, insurance companies, and telecommunication companies. 52% do not do that and have never been doing it. 40% of our respondents are for introducing e-governance. But basically, people do not understand what e-governance is, and that is 31% of Ukrainians. We hope that mass media will help us in that, will help us promote the Western experience. It is interesting that traditional things which cause most interest in the Western world is when people are interested in getting information about you. 43% are interested in that. These are people who would like to know what information the state has about them. As to the information about which state bodies have information about you is also an interesting issue. The citizens do not very often go to websites of the authorities, but out of those, more than half, out of those who do go there, more than half are satisfied. They manage to quite quickly find the information that they're looking for. The most required information is the information about the body, the structure, the leadership. The second most popular information is where you can get administrative services, what type of services, which documents are needed. And third is the information about how the structures of this or that body operate. About only 3% of internet users once a day or once a week at least get information from the websites of the authorities. Most of them, 2/3, are satisfied by the information they get. 70% of those who look for this information believe that it's easy to find it, but there are some wishes. 33% believe that the information is not complete on the websites of authorities. 22% cannot. They say that the information is obsolete. They need new information. And not to overload you with figures, I will add one more thing. The instrument which is obvious after the events at Maidan, the attempt to influence the authorities via internet causes an interest. About 23% of our active internet users would like to be able to collect signatures under petitions. Almost 24%, that is very big, are ready to participate in discussions of the decisions of the and resolutions of the authorities when the draft resolutions are placed on the websites.
Could you explain very briefly what does the e-governance mean? You mentioned that up to 30% of Ukrainians do not know what it is actually. E-governance means the governance via electronic means, that is via IT. What does it comprise? Getting services from the government, receiving information collected by the government agencies, and access and discussion to draft decisions which are taken by the government and information about such decisions. Also, there is a specific thing as e-society or e-community, which means that cultural heritage could be digitized and access to it could be simplified. Some medical services could be digitized and access could be simplified. This also covers protection from cyber attacks, protection of financial sphere from such attacks, and all the issues which are related to our communication with governmental and public authorities, which currently require a lot of effort from us, physical and psychological effort. Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, I have a question to you. All the projects of this type, they are scheduled for a series of years. And now my question, how do you see the allocations from the state budget, with which we also have issues now? Because in the past, we many times experienced a situation when the projects were launched, were started, funds were allocated for the projects, and actually, in a result, that funds were wasted without no practical result from the projects. Actually, we cannot say that the government allocated no funds at all for the informatization. They were allocated, including the international financial institutions. The other thing is that in Ukraine we have currently quite a few electronic resources, like all sorts of registers which were established with the assistance of international donors. But unfortunately, they are not well coordinated. On the other hand, these projects of this type will be financed from the Ukraine 2020 program budget. Philosophy of the heart, civil organization. My question to Mr. Roman, you discussed about the country readiness and the citizens' readiness. How much money would you request from the state budget and from the local budgets for the purposes of raising public awareness and to involve civil organizations, civil society organizations into such informational work? For example, in Italy, only 23% of people use the opportunities suggested by e-governance. I think this is a question to Alexander. Today, there are quite a lot of civil society organizations working in the sphere of e-governance. If you review the last several years, you would see information portals created by NGOs in order to popularize e-governance. Several portals were established and created under local authorities and to demonstrate the possibilities of e-governance. As of the moment, I'm not ready to answer your question more specifically. We are thinking about specific procedure, how to organize this. Union Information Agency, you mentioned 10 top priority services. Would you mention that services? For example, these 10 services will cover not just administrative services. Like administrative services are services in the construction area. In the EU, out of 20 services, they have 12 services for citizens and 8 services for the government. Citizens are provided with services from construction area, from taxation area, etc. Could you please provide a specific example about service? For example, in construction area. For example, in construction area, you may provide a request that or statement that you are beginning your construction process, and you can do this electronically. That is what you can do today. In how many years will electronic democracy become possible in Ukraine, and whether it is possible in Ukraine in general? Maybe it is possible, but I am not sure in how many years, because this is not just an issue of the government readiness. This is the issue of the people's readiness. The experience of those countries which already employ these instruments shows that even in those countries, this instrument is not used fully. but I believe that at the first steps, these stages for implementation first will be mentioned in the white book and later in action plan. I would like to remind you that results of the survey is available at our table for dissemination on our